Life as a hunter-gatherer. For 95% of their time on Earth, humans have provided for themselves by hunting and gathering food from their natural environment. The evolution of foraging. Living with mass-produced food, markets and restaurants in every town, and giant stores that are down the road, it's difficult to think about finding food every day in the natural environment. But this is what humans have done for most of their time on Earth. From when they first appeared, almost 200,000 years ago, until about 11,000 years ago when they began to farm. Before Homo sapiens evolved, our ancestors found food in their natural environment, foraging for millions of years. Foraging means relying on food provided by nature through the gathering of plants and small animals, birds, and insects, scavenging animals killed by other animals, and hunting. The word foraging can be used instead of hunting and gathering. Humans are not the only creatures who forage. What is different about human foraging? Humans, because we communicate verbally, accumulate knowledge, pass it on to younger generations, and work together cooperatively. This allowed humans to create better foraging skills. This makes humans different than some of the other competitors in the animal kingdom. Foraging made us human. As fruit trees in the rainforest became less abundant, hominins had to find other food sources. As they did this, other skills developed. Walking on 2 feet, loss of most hair, smaller intestines, larger brains, and better communication, which became important traits for humans. One of the most important steps that hominids took was to control fire. They did this by tending fires started by lightning. Scientists do not know when this happened. There is evidence that hominids have used fire to cook meats and roots for more than 1 million years. Controlled use of fire may have begun before Homo sapiens, or it may be just an important characteristic. Cooked food provides more nutrition, requires less chewing, and allows intestines to shorten, which leads to brain development. Eating together around a fire may have promoted language development, and these changes in food consumption were an important step in increasing energy in the human system. Humans gradually developed their skill in hunting. At first, hominins scavenged meat that had been killed by other animals. They took the animals to safe places, used stone tools to butcher the flesh, and cracked the bones for the marrow inside. Soon they were able to take down larger animals and find ways for killing multiple prey. As they got better at hunting, they began to herd groups of animals off cliffs and brought the bodies back to a safe place to cut up and eat. Climate and environment influenced what life was like for each group of humans. In general, all humans had a knowledge of their environment. They had a large area to forage. Most foragers lived by moving often and making temporary campsites. They might have moved according to season based on animal migration or the ripening of different plant food sources. Foragers usually lived in small groups of 15 to 30 and split up more when there was little food. Populations grew slowly. Mother's milk provided nutrition for infants, and nursing lasted for 3 or 4 years. Mothers could only carry one infant at a time, so births were spaced out. In these small groups, foragers usually shared food, especially fresh meat. Foraging societies were the most equal societies in human history. Until recently, 5 groups of people who have been living as foragers for 30,000 years. This area is the areas in the Kalahari Desert of Botswana, Nambia, and South Africa. They are called the San Bushmen, or the first people. Most call themselves Bushmen when they refer to themselves collectively. How did the Bushmen survive as foragers in such harsh environmental conditions for so many years? Their survival has given the human community a valuable example of the skills of foragers in extremely challenging surroundings. The Bushmen moved every day during the rainy season in search of budding, edible greens. They constructed simple shelters against the rain at night, and during the dry season they built more stable huts of branches and grass around water sources. Finding water was their first priority. Sometimes they had to dig deep holes wherever the sand was damp and sip up water through hollow grass straws, often storing it in ostrich shells. The tools of the Bushmen were simple. Men used a bow with poison-tipped arrows and spears for hunting deer, antelope, kudu, and buffalo. For gathering, the women used a blanket, a sling made from a hide, a cloak to carry wood and food, smaller carrying baskets, and a digging stick about 3 feet long and about an inch in diameter. Nuts and roots provided the staple foods. Women also collected fruit, berries, bush onions, and ostrich eggs. Insects, grasshoppers, beetles, caterpillars, moths, butterflies, and termites supplied a portion of the Bushmen's protein needs. Hunting contributed about 20% of the total diet, while gathering provided 80%. The Bushmen spent a large portion of their time in leisure activities, conversation, joking, singing, and dancing. Decisions were reached by consensus, with women having relative equality with men. Chiefs were designated, but they had little additional power. Studies of the Bushmen began in the 1950s when they still lived in the traditional way. By the 1990s, most had been forced to adopt to farming as African governments had created game preserves out of some of their former hunting territories. People who study foragers are archaeologists and anthropologists. Archaeologists examine human societies through material, cultural, and environmental data left behind. Their work encompasses human societies from the development of the first tools up to recent decades. Anthropologists study contemporary societies that still live much like pre-agricultural ones. Conclusions about ancient foragers reached from studying modern foragers are difficult to find accurate results, since modern foragers cannot escape completely the world around them. Modern foraging communities often use contemporary tools and partially rely on fairly recent agricultural and technological advances. Their lands have been greatly limited by development and the overall increase in global populations. Traditionally, archaeologists and anthropologists have thought that men did the hunting in foraging societies, while women did the gathering. However, recent studies have challenged this view. People studying apes often point out that primate females can provide for themselves and their offspring without male assistance. Among many current foraging societies, men and women are flexible about who hunts small birds and animals, and in some cultures, the gathering roles are exchanged. The current view holds that past foragers had flexible gender roles depending on individual skills, knowledge, and the local environment. Another ongoing debate among experts concerns the standards of physical and mental health among foragers, who were often viewed as backward cavemen with short, miserable lives, barely surviving. In the 1960s, fieldwork done among surviving foragers revealed that foragers enjoyed good nutrition obtained in a few hours a day, leaving plenty of time for socializing and grooming. By the 1980s, this view was challenged, and no agreement has yet been reached. A third debate is how much human foragers have affected the environment they live in. It was assumed that humans had little effect on the rest of nature until they developed agriculture. Since the 1960s, scientists have wondered about this claim. They have found two things that foragers did to make an impact. Archaeologists have found that foragers set fire to large areas of lands. Scientists think they did this to drive animals out for killing and to promote the growth of fresh plants that would attract animals and provide food for gathering. Australian Aboriginal use of this practice was given the name fire stick farming. These fires turned shrublands into grasslands and altered the environment. In addition, whenever humans migrated into new parts of the world, a wave of extinction of other large animals occurred. In North and South America, about 75% of the animals weighing more than 100 pounds went extinct within a couple thousand of years after human arrival. These animals included mastodons, camels, horses, and saber-toothed tigers. In Australia, where humans are thought to have arrived about 40 to 60,000 years ago, similar extinctions occurred roughly 30,000 years later. the rate of extinction was about 85% and included giant kangaroos and marsupial lions. In Eurasia, these extinctions occurred more gradually and include mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, and giant elk. While debate continues, it may be that a combination of changing climate, human hunting, and other changes brought about by humans have done these large animals in.